Hey, this is Tony with Salt Strong, and in this video I wanted to talk about why it's really important to know how to tie your own rigs when fishing with live or cut bait inshore. Now we're going to be talking about that. Also, I'm going to be talking about the materials that you're going to need to make your own rigs, and then lastly my top 3 rigs that I like to use when fishing inshore. So first, as far as why it's very important to know how to tie your own rigs, number 1, you're going to save money if you know how to tie your own rigs, because these store-bought, pre-made rigs that you see on the shelves that look all flashy and fancy, they can cost anywhere from $3 to $5 each, depending on where you get them from. And in reality, you should be able to make multiple rigs on your own for that same price. So definitely going to help you out there in the long run by saving money. Also, depending on how you want to present your bait, you need to have different rigs available. So you want to be able to know how to tie different rigs depending, how deep you're fishing, if there's strong current, if you're fishing very shallow with no current. All those factors are going to come into play to determine, what type of rig you want to use. Also, the type of bait you're using will help determine that as well. So when you do have to have multiple different styles of rigs, you can make them right there on the spot depending on the type of fishing you're doing, as opposed to going to the store and buying a bunch of pre-made rigs, not knowing which one you're going to have to use when you get out there on the water. So sort of ties into itself there. Now, as far as the rigs go themselves, the materials you're going to need, we'll start out with that. Obviously, you're going to need some type of leader material, either monofilament or fluorocarbon. It's really personal preference. Monofilament is going to save you the most money, because you can get a 50-yard spool for like $3 or $4, even less if you get it on our shop page. And if you are one of our insider members, you do get a pretty good discount on the items on the shop page. And then fluorocarbon, I'll really only use that if I'm fishing super clean water. The fish are very finicky, because it can have a slight advantage when it comes to very clean water. So that's when I would go with fluorocarbon. But at the end of the day, monofilament will get the job done. So you're going to need your leader material. You're also going to need hooks. I prefer circle hooks if I'm using, cut bait, dead bait sitting on the bottom, because if a fish grabs it, it's going to run off, and that will keep that fish from getting hooked in the throat. Also, J hooks are more preferred, in my opinion, if you're using live baits that are very, thick, very big live baits, such as pigfish, big mullet, where that hook point needs to be exposed, and you need to set the hook and rip that hook through that bait to get that fish hooked. That's when I would go with J hooks. And again, size is going to be dependent upon the size of the bait you're using, so you may have to have multiple different sizes of hooks there. Next will be swivels. Swivels, I like to go as small as possible with the swivels. This one right here is super tiny. As you can see there, it's probably no longer than my fingernail, and it has a breaking strength of about 100 pounds, which is more than enough. You're not going to be using any more than probably 20 or 30 pound line inshore. So get yourself a pack of swivels, and then lastly some sinkers. I prefer egg sinkers, anywhere from a ½ ounce up to maybe 2 or 3 ounces. Again, the weight is going to vary depending on how deep you're fishing and how strong the current may be. And now, as far as my 3 favorite rigs that I would highly recommend getting used to and also getting used to making. Number 1 is going to be the simplest of them all. This is just going to be, your standard free line rig. You have a hook attached to about 2 to 3 feet of leader, and then your leader attached directly to your main line. Now, this is going to be a very universal rig. If you're trying to keep your bait up on the surface or a little higher up in the water column, you're free lining that bait, letting that current drift that bait to the strike zone or to the structure you're trying to fish, this can be ideal. Also, this can be great in no current situations where you may be fishing very shallow with cut bait. It'll keep that bait on the bottom. The bait will sort of, wobble around in the wind and the waves, but it's not going to go too far. It'll go to wherever you cast it. So this can be great shallow or deep if you're trying to keep your bait higher up in the water column. Now, next is what we call the fish finder rig. This is going to be more ideal if you're fishing deeper water, you're fishing stronger current, and you want to keep that bait down on the bottom, but let that bait swim on the bottom to whatever the structure is that you're fishing, or let your bait drift to that structure. Because the way it's made, you have your hook attached to your leader. 2 to 3 feet of leader is about the ideal length inshore. And then at the end of your leader, you have a swivel attaching your leader to your main line. And that swivel is important for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's going to keep your line from getting twisted up if your bait does happen to spin in the current. And number 2, it keeps that sinker from going all the way down to the hook. And what this allows you to do is you can open up your bail and it'll keep that bait on the bottom because of the sinker, but it will also allow that bait to swim freely as far as you want it. So you can open up that bail and let that bait swim freely. The only bad thing about this rig that I find is that if you're trying to cast pretty far, it'll get tangled up because that sinker is so far above the hook that it starts spinning in the air and it can get tangled up. Then the last rig I'm going to show you here, it's very similar to a knocker rig. It's almost like a combination of a knocker rig and a fish finder rig. And as you can see here, you have your leader, you have your hook, then you have the swivel attaching your leader to your main line, and then you have the egg sinker in between the swivel and the hook. And that sort of keeps your egg sinker contained. And going back to the casting issue that you may find with the fish finder rig, when you cast this rig, that egg sinker slams down to your hook as your bait's going through the air, and it keeps your line from spinning and getting tangled up on the cast. Also, this helps keep your bait close to the structure since you are able to cast it. You can cast it out to that structure. You have a short section of leader, and then you have that weight keeping that bait down on the bottom. And it's pretty much pinned between the swivel and the hook, so that bait can't travel too far, but it can still swim around freely and look like it's struggling on the bottom to help draw on a strike. So again, this is almost like a reverse fish finder rig. You have pretty much the same leader. The only difference is you have that egg sinker below the swivel as opposed to above it like you do on a fish finder rig. So again, these rigs are very simple to make. What it really comes down to is whether or not you use a swivel, how heavy of a weight do you use, what size hook do you use. That's all going to be dependent on the bait you're using and also how strong the current is, how deep the water is. But going back to these rigs, very simple. The first one I showed you, the free line rig, is just your leader connected to your main line and then a hook at the end of the leader. Very simple. Second rig was the fish finder rig. You have your hook, you have your leader, you have a swivel connecting your main line to your leader, and then you have an egg sinker above the swivel. And then the modified sort of hybrid knocker rig slash fish finder rig, you have your hook, you have your leader, you have your egg sinker on the leader, and then you have your swivel attaching your leader to your main line. So hopefully these tips can help you out when it comes to saving money on rigs. Being able to tie your own rigs will definitely help save you money, and being able to tie your own rigs will help you present your bait properly depending on the type of fishing you're doing and where you may be fishing. So also, if you are interested, we do sell leader material, swivels, hooks, weights, all that on our shop page, so everything you need to make these rigs on your own. And you can save even more money by being one of our insider members, where you save up to 20% off everything on the site, so definitely be sure to take advantage of that. Also, if you need help finding fish, that's another important thing when it comes to finding fish. Highly recommend checking out our Salt Strong Insider Club at saltstrong.com, where we help you catch more fish in less time, and we guarantee that, so definitely check that out. Till next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.
If you're new to Salt Strong, just know that we're the best online fishing club in America because we actually guarantee that you'll catch more fish while saving time and also money on the tackle you need. We do this through premium education, our exclusive insider fishing community, and huge discounts on the best tackle for saltwater anglers. To learn more, go to saltstrong.com. Otherwise, we hope to see you again soon.